Dear students, hope you are well. So in this class, we are going to discuss about the trend, composition and direction of foreign trade in India before liberalization. So I think that most of you know about the concept of foreign trade. What is foreign trade? What are the components of foreign trade? We had already discussed in the earlier classes. So in these classes, we'll focus some other aspects of international trade, foreign trade in India before liberalization. So in this class, we'll discuss behavior of exports and imports from the period 1960 and 1990, 1960 to 1990. In addition to this, we'll focus on import substitution policy or inward looking policy that were taken during 1951 to 1990. We are also going to focus on import licensing and declining exports during the period 1960 and 1970. Real effective exchange rate and its relation with export and import will also be focused in this class. Now, trend of exports. So the performance of Indian export sector during 1964-65 to 1987-88 was not so impressive. Its share of world exports had declined from 0.98% in 1964-65 to only 0.45% in the year 1987-88. Its share of world manufactured exports has declined from 0.65% to around 0.4% during the same period. So both the total exports and the manufacturing exports had not performed well during this period. If you look into the diagram, then you will find that total share of exports to world market had declined, and the same trend has been observed in case of manufacturing products. So in this class, we are also trying to find out the causes behind the declining trend of overall exports as well as manufacturing exports to total export. Then what we have found that Indian government had not traditionally placed much emphasis on exports. So during the planning period, during 1951 to 1970, during this period, Indian government had not given more emphasis on exports. The basic focus of Indian government was to improve the productivity of Indian economy, establishment of industrial projects, irrigation projects, and during this period, Indian government had faced two major wars. In 1962, Indo-China War, and in 1965, Indo-Pak War. So during this period, exports had given less emphasis. This was one of the causes of this declining trend of export during this period. The second point, Indian exports were found to be very sensitive to the real effective exchange rate. So if the real effective exchange rate is depreciated, then the export will be improved, and if it is appreciated, then the export will be declined. So there is an inverse relationship between exports and real effective exchange rate. So during 1975, during 1978-79, and during 1984-88, during this period, there was changes of real effective exchange rate subject to trade deficit. Next, another cause of or we are going to discuss about the impact of export subsidies on the volume of export or the trend of export. If you look into these data, then you will find that during 1971-72, the annual growth rate of export was 4.75%. And after 3 years or 2 years, the export had improved a lot. It had improved from 4.75 to 31.92%. Now we need to find out the causes of this sharp improvement of Indian export. So during 1975, the real effective exchange rate depreciated by around 30%. And the total export subsidies had increased during this period, during 1975, and as a result of which we had realized improvement in the export sector. However, after 1975, during 1977-78 and 1980-81, the export had declined sharply. The growth rate of the export sector was 5.16% during 1977-78, and it had declined from 31.92% to 5.16% and further declined to 4.55% during 1980-81. So the cause between 1978-79 and 80-84, what we have observed that real effective exchange rate appreciated and decreased total export subsidies. Due to these two causes, the export had declined sharply. However, during 1984-85 and during 1990-91, we had observed some improvement in the growth of the export sector, and this is due to that from 1984 to 88, the real effective exchange rate depreciated, reached its lowest point since 1970-71. So real effective exchange rate and export subsidies have great influence on the trend of export, on the volume of exports. So there may be some other causes of the declining or improved trend of export over the years. However, we are trying to show some of the major causes of this trend. Next, we'll focus on the composition, that means structure of export. So far as composition of export is concerned, we have categorized the export into 3 categories: category A, category B, and category C. Under category A, there are so many commodities, but we have shown these commodities: gems and jewelry, marine products, garments, carpets, handicrafts, etc. And you will find so many commodities. If you search in internet and some other books, then you will find out commodities very easily under category A. Under category B, raw materials based products such as jute manufacturers, leather and leather manufacturers, tea, coffee, etc. are included under category B. Under category C, non-traditional manufactured products like textiles, machinery, transport equipment, metal and steel manufacturers, chemicals, sugar, most consumer goods are included under category C. Let's see the trend of this composition over the years. Under category A, we have observed that there is improvement. During 1970-71, the share of category A was 25.97%, and it had improved to 47.4% during 1987-88. But under category B and C, there was declining trend from 39.45% under category B. The share of export had declined to 26.90%, whereas the category C, it had declined 34.58% to 26.03%. So over the years, there was improvement before liberalization. There is improvement under category A, but we had realized, we had experienced declining rate of category B and category C. Let's see the causes. Category A exports product exclusively for exports. These products at that time were produced exclusively for export. So changes in domestic demand have little effect on such exports since they are produced almost exclusively for export purposes, and as a result of which we have realized, we have experienced, observed an improvement under category A regarding the share of exports. If we look into category B, then it includes wood, coffee, tea, etc. So the largest decline, you see, so the largest decline over the years. It declined from around 40% in 1970-71, that means this 1970-71, around 40% to 27% around in 1987-88. This is despite the fact that among this group, leather exports have increased, but supply shortages and increasing domestic demand probably explain this decline. So shortages of supply and increasing domestic demand, due to these two factors, there is declining trend of category B. That means the share of exports have declined sharply. If we look into category C, then it had also declined. Category C exports show a decline both in terms of share of exports. Capital goods and other manufacturers make up the largest share of category C exports, and they are sensitive to changes in domestic demand. So this is very important. They are sensitive to domestic demand. During that period, during this period, there was, one of the agenda of Indian economic planning is industrialization and mechanization of Indian agriculture. So at that time, domestic demand of such type of commodities were very high, and it had an impact on the share of exports. So in this slide, we have discussed about the causes or the composition of exports and their performance over the years, and the factors that influence the composition of export or trend of export over the years. Next, direction of exports. This is very important. Direction of export means that the commodities, the destination of the commodities where we used to export our commodities. So if we look into this table, then India used to export highest to the OECD countries. So what is the full form of OECD? So OECD is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and it was formed during 1961. Right now there are 38 member countries under OECD. some of the countries like USA, UK, Germany, Norway, Spain, France, Slovenia, etc. These countries are included under OECD groups. During 1960-61, what we have found that the share of export to this category of countries, that means OECD, was highest. But over the years, you just see the share had declined from 66.1% to 53.5% in 1991. So significant changes have taken place in the direction of India's export. Prior to our independence, UK used to hold the first position in our foreign trade. UK included under OECD. But due to the various trade agreements, the share of developing countries have improved. You just look into the share of developing countries over the years, you will find out that the share had improved. It was 14.8%, but in 1991, it is 17.1%. So the share had improved so far as developing countries are concerned. But after the Bangladesh war in 1971, relations between India and USA were strained and the trade between the two countries declined. We are also making efforts to increase our export to the Middle East in order to pay for imports of petroleum. So due to these causes, there are slight changes. Of exports to the OECD countries and improvement so far as we have realized some improvement to the Eastern Europe as well as the developing countries. So the trade relation among these countries over the years have improved a lot. So in the next class, we are going to discuss about the trend of imports, its composition and direction. So till now, we have discussed about the trend, composition and direction of export in case of India. And if you have any doubts till now regarding this class, regarding the trend, composition and direction of export before liberalization in India, you can put that queries in the comment box. In the next class, I will try to make you clear. Thank you.